Michael, let's move, we'll go backwards, talk a little bit about Gold Basin. What I love about this project is literally the layout of the mineralization, right? That it is, and you got into this at the end of your presentation. It is just at surface. It's these layers that are close together. There's hardly any unmineralized material in between. And it's got good metallurgy, and it's just right there. And there's all this potential to expand. And that must be, I mean, you are a mining engineer, so that must be the thing that attracted you to this asset off the bat.
Well, yes, well, initially we didn't know, really. I mean, we had this large database, mainly shallow holes, so really the average depth is about 50 meters, but over a 13-kilometer strike length, and the guys in the 90s were just haphazard. They really didn't know what was going on, so they were trying to extend the pit, as I said. So they put holes eastern, western, vertical, and there was just a big combination, and so it was quite hard. But once we'd sort of straightened up with initially, I think the drilling in the 30 holes that we put in the end of 2019, we got a bit of a clue, and then through the over 100 holes that we did last year, it became pretty obvious what was going on. And then we were able to tie in. We look at the historical holes and say, oh, right, that's what it is. You can see where they add in now. But more importantly, it's the same thing to the south. The PLM deposit's got about 30 holes in, and they match up exactly. In fact, the elevations from the top of the deposit to the south, there's an elevation difference between the PLM deposit, the cyclopic, and the stealth. And probably just a weathering profile, to be honest. But it's just, you can see the top of one, the layers match up the same sort of elevations at the bottom of the cyclopic, and the top of the cyclopic, they match up with the lower ones at stealth. So we've got this advantage that we've got over 500 historic holes, and while we can't use those, some of them might be usable because they're pretty good quality, others weren't in terms of their logs and positions or what have you. So we can use them internally to get an idea. But what we're seeing literally is no real boundaries on the mineralization. There's nothing that's there's no logical or geological structures that stop this thing from expanding both east and west and north and south. Far from it. In fact, every indication is that the Fry mine to the north, which has only got one hole in there, which we can see, but there was an historical record, beautiful sort of little write-up from the government mining engineer in 1936, where they described how much activity went on, and that was much larger than I thought it was. So yeah, that's some 400 meters north of the last hole we put in cyclopic, and yeah, so it's bulk target, it's from surface, as I said. You can only look at it as one way, as an open pit, and the size will just depend on how much more we expand. But there's literally no reason at the moment we can see why it doesn't extend, at least a kilometre east, where we've got a drill hole sticking out there, and we've got this area which is stealth. So it is, I keep saying this, it does feel a bit like Christmas in terms of a deposit, because short of logic dictates there may be the breaks in there and everything else, but at the moment we're not finding them. It's just we have a lot of drilling to do. That's the reality. It's a large area and it's a lot of drilling, so we just got to logically expand cyclopic that we know about already. There is something like 60 holes in the stealth deposit historically, which show that that's very healthy, with regard to grades and the structure there. But we have to look at it as if we're starting from scratch, given the nature that there are historical holes. So if you like, unlike some of the chaps who are sort of doing not much more sort of base exploration, we do have the advantage that there are a number of targets which have already had some historical drilling that now makes sense to us, and we can look at those each one as a stage exploration in terms of drilling. And when it came to the geophysics, which I mentioned, we did a full suite of this with this IP, which is going to add into it. So we're pretty happy what we've found out from that. As we said, it was enough information, particularly with this hyperspectral survey we did, for us to actually peg some extra ground, which, as Doug was saying, was a bit of a learning process, learning how to do that in Arizona as well. Not quite as easy as it is here, where we can just go online and pick the blocks we want. So that was a little bit of an effort, which Charles must take most of the credit for there. Yeah, and similarly, we've reached agreement. Well, it's we're finalising things with lawyers. We're we're one of the prospectors there, which have had the ground for 50 years. And like Doug was saying, you know, it was a partnership and those people have died and then the children are involved, you know, and there's a whole host of things. But, you know, we're pretty confident that will be sorted as well. So that's pretty good. So we've expanded the land package there as well.
So, like you say, it's open in most directions and the lots of evidence of, you know, potential for continuity and no reason to think that it isn't. So that brings up the sort of classic question that a project at your stage faces, which is, when do you pin a number on it, right? You have a lot of data, and in some ways it's easier to market a story once you can say, we have this many ounces and it's at surface and blah, 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 we know the metallurgy. And yet it's also hard to make that decision because you still see a lot more ground that you want to drill.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there was a recent sale of a company which didn't put out a resource, which went very well.
Yeah, I heard about it.
Yes. It's hard to know exactly. We're obviously planning on one this year with this current drill program, but you do get this thing where I mean, if you look at the drilling last year, I mean, essentially 90% of the drill holes will hit mineralization. You know, it's such a high success rate. Certainly not used to that in this part of the world. So, you know, we got this expansion program. So the short answer is we've been in a position to have a resource out there. I just yes, when do you stop? I'm kind of interested in just keep expanding it, really. And the more you look, you know, you're chatting about it, the more I look at these things, the more excited I get about it, because it's sort of, you know, you see that there's a mine there. I really see there's a mine already. Internal numbers show that's the case. I keep saying it really depends how big this is. It's an open pit. It's got everything going for it in terms of infrastructure, where it is, you know, and you know, heap leachable oxide deposit in that part of the world is fantastic, and we've just got this continued growth. So, as I said, we've got a 1.4 million drilling program underway. We drilled 22 holes in January. There's a little break for maintenance. They'll be coming back. We may put a second rig on there just to speed it up a little bit. That will depend on availability. So we've got sort of cash in the bank to do all of that, you know, through. And looking at that, we'll probably be finishing up, you know, way it's going, probably mid-April, I would guess, maybe late April. And then, you know, we'll look at the resource from there and see how we are. It is one of these things, though, where we will continuously see the gaps, because we can't fill in the kilometre each way yet, you know. But it's a nice problem to have, to be honest with you. So.
Fair enough. Okay, nice to hear. Yeah, that's a clear plan, and get to the end of this program and see if it's time to make a count.